But there is another response, and I think it's more common amongst churched people. I think it goes a little something like, yeah, like I know I'm a sinner, but it's really, my sin's not all that bad, right? Like I tell a little white lie every now and then, but I've never murdered anybody. I've never committed adultery. And so my sin is really, it's not all that bad. I'm a sinner, but I'm not all that bad. There's a book I read recently called The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. It's one of his more popular books. You kind of got to read it with a grain of salt. In fact, in his introduction, he says this is by no means any accurate theological depiction of what heaven and hell is going to be like. So you have to read that with that understanding. But the whole premise of the book is that these people from hell get a one-day bus ticket to heaven. And so the whole book, all it does is basically explain conversations between people from hell and people from heaven. Again, this is not at all what heaven and hell is actually going to be like, but I think it sheds some pretty good light on how we view our sin. Listen to this conversation that a man from hell has with a man from heaven. The man from hell is confused as to why he's in hell and the other guy's in heaven. This is what he says. He says, I don't understand. I've gone straight all my life. I don't say I was perfect, and I don't say I had no faults. Far from that. But I have done my best all my life. I've done my best by everyone. That's the sort of guy I was. I never asked anything that wasn't mine by rights. If I wanted a drink, I paid for it, and I took my wages, and I did my job. That's the sort of guy I was, right? So he's obviously very aware of the fact that he's not perfect. He admits that. I'm not perfect. But all in all, I've done a pretty good job. I've never done anything that wrong. Listen to the response from the man from heaven. He says, that's not exactly true, Man from hell says, what isn't true? Man from heaven's response is, you were not a decent man. You didn't do your best. But none of us did. None of us were. I think sometimes we can place a false hope in our own goodness. We can start to think that maybe if we're just good enough, we can somehow earn our righteousness. We can begin to pay back that debt that we've earned for ourselves if we just do good enough. But the foundation I want to lay for us this morning, if we want to understand this parable, and if we want to understand the gospel, the foundation that we have to have is that in and of ourselves, there is no hope. We have zero hope of earning our own righteousness by being good enough.